Welcome to Design Diary, the podcast where you get to look inside my board game design notebook as well as what's going on inside my head. We look at a new word each day from the sense of mechanics, tone, theme, or inspiration for a full game. Today's word is
Veld. Actually, it's pronounced Veld. V-E-L-D. Veld. A grassland, especially of southern Africa, usually with scattered shrubs or trees. And essentially this word just means field. So there's not a ton to work with. It's a field in Africa. But I dug deeper into Veld and found a few other things that were pretty interesting. First of all, there are different variations of it. There's the high Veld, which is just a higher plateau. The low Veld, which is a lowland area. You could see there's plateaus and things like that in the low Veld, cooler atmosphere in the high Veld, and then there's two other ones, which is the brush Veld and the thorn Veld, which I haven't been able to tell if they were the same, two different terms, but thorn Veld has specific, I think it's acacia, A-C-A-C-I-A, thorns, which is a thorny grassland region, and the brush Veld is a lot of brush. Which may be the same thing. But it all made me think of a few things. One is I'll get to the weird one first. Okay. So we have a lot of games that simulate neat parts of role-playing games. For example, some great parts of a role-playing game are like a traditional Dungeons & Dragons style game is simply building your character. So working up your character sheet and things like that. And I know there's games that that's the game. It embraced the character creation concept and gamified it. So the one that I thought was gamifying the map making part of, running a big campaign and things like that. Having just been over my brother's house, seeing all his maps he's making for his I think he's playing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. He's just making a ton of maps and somehow trying to gamify that. And then looking at something like Carcassonne, you're essentially making a map and it does gamify it, but getting a little more creative in it where instead of just tile placement, it could be drawing, which reminds me of something like The Quiet Year, where you're playing the game and drawing the map and you have this little relic when you're done playing the game. You have this map that you created. But just thinking about that, and it's hard to gamify something where you're drawing. It's hard to give a limit to how much you can draw, or, it could show you something. You could have a card that shows you, now you can draw this on the map anywhere you want. And it's a little bit open interpretation how you draw it. It needs to be something where fuzzy lines are okay. But I thought of just like map making the game, in that you've got this high Veld, you've got this low Veld, you've got this thorn Veld, and all these different areas that you're drawing and creating, and it's making this experience. And by the end, same thing as Quiet Year, you've got this map that you made, and it means something. And I don't know what the threat is there. I don't know any of that, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. But the second was a little more normal, I guess you would say, was like an Animal Kingdom style. There were a couple things. One was area control, which I always lean on, and the second was like a set collection type of game. And the thing that I thought could be interesting about both of them was there's a ton of animals in this Veld. I have the list here. Just a list here. It looks like lion, cheetah, giraffe, elephant, hippopotamus, oryx, which I don't know what it is, kudu, which I don't know what it is, eland, I don't know, or eland, sable antelope, roan antelope. They survive only in or near such protected areas, which are different parks within Zimbabwe. And the reason for this is because there's hunting. So that leads me to the one threat in any sort of game. I mean, the map building game could be simply, the protection of the animals and the conservation of the animals through the, way that you build your Veld. Each player is going at the same time and trying to create their own so that the animals survive. But the Animal Kingdom, area control game that I had the one mechanic that I thought was interesting to a Veld, which was something with line of sight. Because most of this is flat land. There's very few trees. There's scattered trees. Once you get into the higher, the high Veld, you start to see some mountains and things like that. But when it's a plateau, you've got this straight path that if an animal is within a line of sight of another animal, it adds a threat. And then the threat is what's going to dictate how much you can do. If you're in severe threat, you can obviously do less. If you're in less threat, you can do more. So a goal is to, manage your threat level while also managing, your survival. From a set collection side, I could even see everything was map, but I could even see just as a basic card game where you have almost like suits and ranks. So the idea there is that players are playing to a line of cards from left and right, and this line is essentially your map, and it's super abstracted because it's a simple line. But this would show, I think they would overlap in a way so that you only see the land type, because there's an animal type on the bottom and a land type on the top, for example. So on the land type, it's just a line. So it might be a low Veld, then a high Veld, then a low Veld, then a thrush Veld, or a brush Veld, or a thorn Veld, or just combine them into a thrush Veld. But there's all these different Velds, and they're going in a line. And then this line of cards determines not what can be placed in them, but how we're going to score or something along those lines. And then under that, in columns, so that's a row going across the table. Let's say it's up to like 10 or 12 cards. And then even like two players head to head, or just players are placing underneath the animals that are in those sections. And I can even imagine there being some sort of ranking in the ones that are at the top of the section versus the bottom as you go out from your long row of cards, your long row of location types. So almost like a King of the Mountain, where it's not mountains. High is good in certain areas. Low is good because maybe it's a lesser line. If you're going with that line of sight thing, it's harder to see. The one thing that I had a note of was the animals of locations next to each other see the ones that are in the same row as them. So if I add to, say each pile or each column, whatever we're calling them, has a set amount of animals, and column A has 5 animals and column B has 4. The extra animal in column A can either be at the top and be the best position because nothing else is equal to that in any other column. So there's nothing adjacent, essentially. It could be the worst position because there's nothing adjacent, or just because it's considered the bottom. It's the farthest from food, or it's the farthest from the Veld, but you could also be hiding. I had all kinds of little notes about just that physical placement of everything, and I thought that was a cool idea, and one that I would love to pursue because it's right up my alley. So part of this week's show is that I wanted to do figure out the player order of a game based on the term of the day. And you'll notice we didn't do it yesterday because it was a guest episode with Rob that we recorded a week ago. So it wasn't a factor. But in thinking about Veld for starting player mechanic, the first thing you think of is these different Veld types, and there's high, low, and regular. And, you could say the tallest player goes first. You could say the shortest player goes first. But you could say that with the term Veld being the in-between one, the middle Veld, essentially, the player in the middle goes first. And determining the middle is tough because if you've got 4 players, there's a whole other thing. So that just doesn't work at all. Because it's a grassland, you could say the last player to mow the lawn, which is just another silly one. I keep trying to come up with ones that are not silly, but Generally they are, or they are like the youngest person goes first, because there's a, disadvantage to going an advantage to going first, or things like that. So let's look at that and go with the age. The middle age goes first. And in the event that there are more than, there's an even number of players, and at that point you just flip a coin. Or I hate having a tiebreaker for the first player starting position, but it's just, it's just silly, and I wanted to add it this week. So here we go. Let me know if you have anything for Veld. I keep saying Veld. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks. See ya.